great accomplishment. We're really, really proud of that, and more things to come on that front. I'd also want to make sure that we hope you had a chance to meet our membership team on your way in. Certainly shout out to Aisha, Ella, Sonia, all that team. If you're already a member of the Fort Worth Report, thank you. Our nonprofit newsroom depends on support from this community. For less than the cost of a latte each month, help power local reporting we all depend on. And if you're not yet a member, we hope you'll join us today and receive one of these really fancy lapel pins that we're giving our members. As we celebrated our 5th birthday last month, yes, we turned 5, round of applause for that. We celebrated with a few of you in this room at Tulips, where we announced our live music coverage and the launch of our new Fort Worth Report app. And I would recommend, if you haven't downloaded yet, please download it. We're getting great reviews and would love to hear from you. We also kicked off our Vision 2030, a future worth reading, and that's our plan for expansion and growth in Tarrant County. We prepared a short video, I promise it's very short, that tells you a little bit about that, and then we can answer any questions you may have at a later time. Lisa?
Fort Worth is one of the fastest growing cities in America, and as the city has grown, access to reliable local news hasn't kept up. In 2021, a group of community leaders, the Coalition of the Concerned, saw that gap and chose to act. They came together to build the Fort Worth Report, a nonprofit newsroom created by the community for the community. And 5 years later, it's reshaped Fort Worth and inspired local news organizations nationwide. Today, the Fort Worth Report publishes trusted local news stories daily, hosts dozens of free public events each year, and engages residents on the issues that matter most, from public schools to arts and culture. Across the political spectrum, readers trust us to get the story right. Now, it's our responsibility to meet the growing need for trusted local news across Tarrant County. Through Vision 2030, the Fort Worth Report is expanding to include all across Tarrant, reaching new communities and growing our team. Powered by a newsroom built to last. This is what local news looks like when a community invests in itself. The Fort Worth Report, free, fair, local.
Again, on the Vision 2030, we'd be happy to meet with any of you and tell you more about that story in terms of what the future looks like. And I tell you, just a little bit of a spoiler, it's really a bright future for the Fort Worth Report. I'd also like to mention too, we are taking nominations still for our Stories of Honor program, where we honor veterans who have served, but then also give back beyond the uniform. So please, we know that there are many, many worthwhile stories that need to be told on that front. We would welcome those nominations. And of course, today would not be possible without our sponsors. I'd like to thank North Texas Community Fund, who's our series food sponsor, the Real Estate Council, who's our series silver sponsor, our series supporting sponsors, United Way of Tarrant County, and the Mental Health Connection. If you'd like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, don't hesitate to reach out to Jody, seated right here, and Randy, right back there. And also, I'd like to give a shout out again for all the help and coordination from Melissa, who made this possible, and I know many of you have talked to her personally, so And now I'd like to introduce Texas Wesleyan, our host this morning, Hector Quintanilla. You come on up, Hector, and he'll tell us a little bit about some of the updates of things that have been happening here at Texas Wesleyan.
Thank you, Mike, for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. Mike was sharing with me just a few minutes ago some of the metrics about visitors to these events and how many are first-time visitors versus repeat, and the number's like 1,200 distinct new visitors to campus. So it's the first time to the Texas Wesleyan campus. Welcome, but welcome everybody to the Martin University Center, named after our sponsoring benefactors Lou and Nick Martin. So not to one-up anything that you just said, Mike, because sometimes people try to do that right. We are celebrating, or just completed the celebration of Texas Wesleyan's 135th anniversary. Yes. And within that is the legacy of being the first institution of higher education founded here in Fort Worth. We really started out the academic year on a very positive note. We had the largest freshman class in university history, which was wonderful. And then just a few days ago, we graduated the largest undergraduate class in the university's history. Yes. And having worked here at Texas Wesleyan for 30 years, I'm going to tell you that commencement graduation is the most happiest time on our campus. We love seeing our students walk and move on into career paths and economic mobility for themselves and their future generations. About 60% of our students are first-time generational students, come to college. And so we are very happy that we are able to serve Fort Worth in that way. In this last year, we accomplished a number of things. I won't go through the entire list, but one of them is that we completed a comprehensive fundraising campaign under the leadership of our president, Emily Messer. And not only did we complete it by meeting the goal of $40 million, we exceeded that goal. And that money has gone towards the support of our infrastructure across campus, along with programmatic support in education and the sciences. Just like the Fort Worth Report, we'll be starting our new strategic plan, Igniting Impact. And so we'll be rolling out that new strategic plan this year, along with an effort to join NCAA Division II. So you'll be hearing some about that. Yes, we're very excited about that as well. And all that dovetails into the forecasted completion of the Karen Kramer Stadium, which is just on the west side of the campus. So with that, welcome if you're a first-time visitor. Welcome to those of you who are repeat visitors. And thank you for this opportunity to share a few moments with you.
Thank you so much, Hector. And now let's move on. I'd like to introduce our Mayor, Mattie Parker, and now Mayor of the 10th largest city in America. It's my pleasure to have her open our discussion this morning with remarks regarding her green space and open space initiatives. Mayor Parker?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for taking time. You should know this is special because I don't do breakfast. It's not because I'm not an early riser, it's because I like to joke my family does not really function well if I'm not in the house to get everyone out the door on time. But this really is an important conversation. I'm very thankful that Fort Worth Report has really furthered the way that we can spread the word around this work across the city of Fort Worth. When we announced our work around Good Natured several years ago, it was actually at State of the City for the Fort Worth Chamber. And when I wanted to sort of package the why behind this, I candidly sort of had to return to my youth. A lot of folks in this audience may not know me well, but I was raised by two great hippies. And I spent most of my childhood going to music festivals, for real. I missed 4 weeks of 5th grade against my will because we were in Kerrville for most of that folk festival. But one of my mom's favorite artists is Joni Mitchell, and Joni Mitchell is just the song of my youth for sure. All of her different albums and records. My parents only had albums. They still play albums today. And if you are familiar with her work, one of my favorite songs of hers is Big Yellow Taxi. And the first stanza verse of this song is, to me, the perfect opening of why we're here today and why this is so important a conversation for the 10th largest city in America. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hotspot. Don't it always seem to go? They don't know what they've got till it's gone. They paved paradise and put it in a parking lot. So that, to me, encapsulates why this conversation is so vitally important at this moment, at this time, as this city has just crested over 1 million people as the 10th largest city in the country. I was very fortunate as a child to be raised on our cattle ranch that we still have today. I didn't know the existence of what big buildings looked like. I understood great sunsets and a landscape and a night sky that, candidly, those of us that live in an urban environment don't get to see on a daily basis. But I think in Fort Worth, despite our growth and prosperity as a large city in America, we can still offer that to our children of future generations if we just do the work today, which is why these 4 amazing people on stage are going to espouse their wisdom and their perspective in different ways with you this morning. I've always said that these experiences of my youth really did inform who I am today. Our friend Patrick Newman, who runs Brit, loves to use the term emotional souvenirs. And I think that's really poignant. Those of us that can each give a reason why the outdoor space is so vitally important to your own story, because it has provided emotional souvenirs along the way. Green space, fresh air, clean watersheds, these are all vitally important to a vibrant city, a natural world full of wonder and opportunity that really does matter. Fort Worth is now the 10th largest city in America. So what does that mean? It means that we are being developed at 50 acres per week in the city of Fort Worth. It's a staggering fact that we understand at the city very well, but we are filled with possibility of what it means to be unlike most large cities, to yes, embrace growth, but also protect our natural landscape. And we are only half developed as a large city. 350 square miles and only half developed. So we do find ourselves at a unique crossroads, which is why this conversation is so important. It's an opportunity to develop what is meant to be great stewards, to protect a heritage and a landscape in our city that will set us apart. So the question I have this morning that kind of sort of sits with me every day is, what do we want Fort Worth to look like 50 years from now? We recognized this responsibility and urgency when we started the Good-Natured Initiative. We started with two simple goals we could all articulate: to preserve at least 10,000 acres over 5 years, and to create more and better parks enabled by more collaboration with the private sector and other partners across our city. Today, Good-Natured has become a strategy for growth in Fort Worth. It is a decision-making framework that guides how conservation, across access to open space, and long-term stewardship are all integrated into the decisions we make across the city of Fort Worth. There is intention behind this work, and it's been in process for years. And as Allison can share with you when she's speaking in a moment, we take 2 steps forward, maybe a step back, then we rehuddle, and we contemplate what it looks like to steward this work forward. But I am very proud of where we are today. The mayor's 10-minute walk to parks initiative, where in the past 2 years, we've had double-digit improvements. Thanks to the Trust for Public Land Park score, we are now 58 nationally, up from 72 last year and 91 in 2024. I really want to be top 50, so we're working on that. The goal of a 30% tree canopy created by our new urban forestry master plan and ordinance to support it was an incredible step forward, and great thanks to our late Mayor Pro Tem Gina Bivens, who became our Lorax and lover of all trees, and helped really steward that particular urban forestry master plan forward. The Valley Storage Ordinance that protects our vital floodplain across the city of Fort Worth. Our comprehensive plan that is ongoing to create better buffer zones for our residential areas, which is incredibly important. And a new natural land management policy that outlines an approach for maintaining these areas. Allison will probably have a moment to talk about it as well. It's probably burned in your memory by now, unfortunately. Let us be clear that these are about conservation and development, because they're not competing interests. You can do both of those things at the same time. It's why I'm so pleased that Paxton Metherall has taken the time to be here on stage today on behalf of Casco and the Edwards family, because I think their development really does show you can do both at the same time. You'll hear from Allison, as I mentioned, who serves as our green space champion in the city of Fort Worth, and she's leading our work. It's a great title, right? The Trust for Public Land as well, who you'll also get to hear from this morning, gave us an open space mapping tool that has directed the city's investment in areas that will most protect our open spaces and our watersheds. The 2022 bond program gave us $15 million, our first seed fund towards really protecting and purchasing open space across the city of Fort Worth. And thanks to all of the headwinds not being successful, our bond just this last month did pass, giving us an additional $25 million to continue this work specifically to protection of open space in the city of Fort Worth. And I know without asking, this is an engaged group of people, and I trust all of you voted in that bond election, and I'm incredibly thankful for your advocacy. And to date, ladies and gentlemen, we have conserved over 600 acres of open space across the city of Fort Worth, and that number still continues to climb. Good Nature has also put an important new renewed effort around our parks into things like the Green Print Master Plan, an aspirational study and guide for the future of park development. We're also incredibly thankful for our partners at Tarrant Regional Water District and their recreational master plan, and how all of their work also integrates into the city of Fort Worth's protection of our watershed, the Trinity River, and the beautiful Trinity Trails. As I mentioned, our bond passed, and it also includes more than $185 million towards not just open space acquisitions, but also parks, recreation, and green space improvement, including $25 million toward our beautiful Gateway Park. So, my original goal, your original goal, which is 10,000 acres preserved for more and better parks, is becoming a reality through this Good Natured initiative. But it will take more than just the city's work to do all of these things. Frankly, we all need the ability to move faster and think bigger and protect more land than the city can do alone. And that's why we are thinking big about next steps to potentially bring together the private sector and philanthropic partners, looking at how other big cities have truly become conservation cities. Because I really do believe Fort Worth can lead the way, not just in the state of Texas, but really across the country. We can roll up our sleeves and do big work. So I hope I can come back to you in the fall when we're ready to announce what that big conservation effort really looks like and put our money where our mouth is to protect our parks and open spaces across the city of Fort Worth. So heed the warning of Joni Mitchell. Don't take paradise. We can do this together. These 4 panelists have taken the time to do this morning because they are experts in their fields. They understand what this conservation work looks like, not just in Fort Worth and Texas, but across the country. So allow us to learn a bit more. All 4 of you, thank you so much for spending breakfast with us this morning. Thank you to Texas Wesleyan University for being such a gracious host. And congratulations on 135 years of being here as our hometown university here in Fort Worth. And thank you to the Fort Worth Report for allowing us to spend a bit more time on, to me, what is one of the most important efforts all of us can do, which is plant trees today. We may never sit under, but certainly our grandchildren and great-grandchildren too will be able to enjoy those things. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Mattie. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Nicole Lopez. Nicole is our environment reporter, and she'll moderate today's panel. I think it's really taking, in terms of listening to Mayor Parker's words, to really think about today and tomorrow what Fort Worth will look like in 50 years as a result of this initiative. Nicole?
Thank you so much, Mayor Parker, for those opening remarks. I'm Nicole Lopez. I'm the environment reporter here with the Fort Worth Report. Thank you all so much for being here today. Since I started covering the environment back in late 2024, open space and land conservation has become a regular part of my beat. And talking to residents and experts, one part of the conversation around land that always comes up is how Fort Worth's green spaces are important to quality of life. Naturally, people want to know what the future of the city's green space is going to look like. So today we have experts to answer very critical questions around that topic at hand. And with that, I'd like to just reintroduce our panelists. Our first panelist joining us today is Allison Docker, the Green Space Champion with the City of Fort Worth. Also joining us is Carrie Kosnica, the Texas Project Manager with Trust for Public Land. We also have Paxton Motherall, Vice President of the Casco Development Co. and Board Member with the Tarrant Regional Water District. And lastly, we have Rachel Seats, the North Texas Acquisitions Manager with the Native Prairies Association of Texas. So jumping into our first question, we'll start with you, Allison. Given Fort Worth's growth and the rate at which it's expanding, how can we maintain quality of life as it relates to green space while also attracting business?
All right. excited to be here, and I just want to say I wasn't sure how many people were going to be here, and it's really wonderful to see such support in this room. So, I think Mayor touched on this. Ideally, attracting business and growth goes hand in hand with open space, prioritizing open space. It's not really one or the other. They should work together. It's really, I think, maybe more about strategic planning and aligned planning that builds economic vitality. So I think of green space as economic infrastructure. People want to live, work, and play where they have access to the outdoors and the outside and to nature. And businesses know this. We see that having access to parks and trails, recreation, nature in general, shade even, has a direct influence on things like talent recruitment, retention, go through the list, public health, physically, mentally, socially, also things like building tourism economies, recreation economies, things like that, and also land value. People want to, like I said, people want to live, work, and play where they can be outside. And so it's more about, I think the key is to be strategic in aligning, land use, transportation, ecology, economic development in a way that really, from the very beginning, that kind of sets up the future. And thinking about, I think what's important too, and I always like to say this over and over and over again, is green space is not just an amenity, a nice to have, it's really a core piece of infrastructure.
Absolutely, thank you. Carrie, would you like to add to that?
Well, I think she did a really good job explaining that, and I agree. I think with the Trust for Public Land, we are involved with a national movement that thinks that green space is not necessarily a perk or land that you didn't use or a nice amenity here and there. It's a fundamental need for these communities to be healthy and happy together. So we like to work with partners, especially like the city of Fort Worth, to be able to push that agenda forward so that we have happier, healthier communities for everybody. We think everybody deserves those wonderful spaces, and we want to help you be able to develop those.
Thank you, Carrie. Paxton, would you like to add?
I'd just add, I think we all experienced it. I can't believe it's been 6 years now, with COVID and just the confinement that we all experienced. And then I think the result of that is people realized how much they valued the human interaction and having access to green spaces and outdoors. I mean, from our experience, just having proximity to the trail system, we saw tremendous increase in activity, primarily correlated to just that desire to get out and be outdoors. We continue to see that, and it is a big driver in where business wants to be as well. So I do think there's a direct correlation between having these great open spaces, access to the trail system, I think is a huge asset for Fort Worth, and one that's has flown under the radar for a lot of years. But I think it's something that really sets Fort Worth apart from a lot of other cities around the country, and I think that's something that we've got to continue to lean in on and expand with these initiatives.
Thank you, Paxton. Rachel?
They put it all so well, so I'll keep it short, but I do think that our city can prosper with conservation and development working hand in hand versus independently.
Sure. And we'll start with Carrie for this question. What do you foresee as issues in the future, some of which Fort Worth may already be dealing with, regarding balancing development, green space, and the resources that accompany those natural areas?
That's a good question. I think some of the challenges that we face are probably the challenges that we face in a lot of areas, and it's time and money. So land can be very expensive, but land's also much more expensive 10 years from now. So I think being able to capitalize on those opportunities when they're available, I think is really vital to be able to support the park system and support the communities. So, and then also when it comes to funding, being able to leverage and be able to collaboratively work with others to help be able to take on that nut, to be able to raise the funds that are needed to be able to acquire the space, manage the space, and be able to be an advocate for the space. So I think time and money are probably the two things that we really want to work together on.
Absolutely. Rachel, would you like to add to that with your background in conservation?
As far as challenges for the future of Fort Worth, I think also water is a consideration, given our growing population. We have some fantastic reservoirs, we have aquifers, and I think that, especially with the growing rate of development, certain data centers, and the influx of business, we definitely need to be keeping our water resources in mind.
Allison, go ahead.
So, I think also those are great answers too, and I think that's a really big part of it. But, right now, looking into the future, I think the decisions that we're making today now impact what we will have to deal with in the future. So I think our opportunity, like Mayor was saying, we still have a lot of land to develop in this area, and that is really our opportunity now. The decisions we make today set up a framework for the future. And I love the analogy of planting a tree today. We're never going to be able to sit in the shade and reap those benefits, but our children and our children's children and all the new families coming to Fort Worth will be able to reap those, enjoy that shade. And so, I think that it's just really important what we do now, because one of the issues in the future, if we don't do it now, we won't have the ability to. We'll have missed our chance. It will be gone. So.
Thank you. Paxton, would you like to speak from either your water district background or with Edwards Ranch?
Yeah, I'd just say the collaboration, I think, is key to the success of any of this, right? I mean, we've got the private sector needs to be working with the public sector on this, on these initiatives. No one group is going to be able to do this alone. So I do think the collaborations where the private sector can be involved early, but also where we're working with our public partners, whether it's with the city or the water district, and just being thoughtful about what's being developed, where it's being developed, how that infrastructure is going to impact the community. It is just something that it's going to take a lot of work, and everybody rolling up their sleeves and working together. So I think that's really a key piece to making this all happen.
Absolutely. Fort Worth has acquired hundreds of acres of open space since launching the Open Space Conservation Program. What does the care look like, or what does it need to look like in order to maintain these areas to their highest quality? Allison, would you like to start?
Sure. So as Mayor mentioned too, we have a new natural lands management policy in place, which is great timing. We've acquired over 600 acres of open space. We've secured funding through the bond election to add to that. And so recognizing that managing these lands is extremely different than how you would maintain traditional recreational parkland. And so, having that policy that sets an overarching kind of vision and framework is extremely helpful. It's not a document. We're working on getting it up on the city's website so it's accessible to the public, so you can see. It's not a document that really gets into the weeds and defines management plans for specific properties. It really outlines the why this is important and talks about different applications and what that natural land management looks like. I think there's a public education component to it, because people you're used to seeing people out mowing. Now these lands might have taller grasses. It's a prairie that we're trying to conserve and keep. And so talking about why that's important and the benefits that the public will see from that. It's fun too. We are starting to, some of the applications that it outlines are biological assessments, habitat assessments, also things like prescribed burning. Fort Worth is really lucky to have the leadership out at the Fort Worth Nature Center that are truly experts in prescribed burns. I think they've burned over 1,000 acres out at the Nature Center, and we're hoping to bring that into open space land management. And they're training, Fort Worth Fire Department as well as all the adjacent fire departments to help manage that. And then also, invasive removal. We've done things like targeted herbicide applications, but also grazing. A few years ago, the city had a few goats on a couple of acres, but this year, we're actually excited to announce this. We're launching a full goat program. And so, yeah, it's super cute. We'll have, I think we're working with 2 different consultants that will be managing goat herds on open space as well as parkland properties. There's lots of natural areas within parkland. And so we're working on our list of locations, and we hope to share that publicly soon.
Thank you. Rachel, what does the care look like, or what does it need to look like for these areas?
Sure. Well, I think Allison she's put it really well already. I think balance is a huge consideration. So how do we balance all the different usages we want from our land? There's an argument for restoring what the land looked like historically. You know, we're in the Cross Timbers region, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's rolling hills, that's dense woodlands and open prairie lands. So there's an argument for having some of our spaces represent what it was historically. There's an argument for having, you know, really great agricultural production, recreational access. So in my mind, it's just looking at balance. How do we meet the needs of everyone?
Thank you, Rachel. Carrie, would you like to add that?
Sure. I think one thing, just with the nuts and bolts of maintenance, what I like to think about, prior to being in the land trust world, I was a senior manager for a large parks and rec department in the Midwest. So I have sort of both hats on when I have these conversations, because these assets obviously need maintaining and they need careful maintaining. But what I like to ask is, who is benefiting from that space? And you start making a list of everybody that can benefit from that space, and all of a sudden you've got not just a city obligation to be able to maintain this, because sometimes cities can feel an inch deep and a mile wide. You know, they have a lot of competing priorities every single day. But looking at the community, look at this today. Look at the interest of your community today. I don't even think this would have happened 10 years ago in most cities. So look at all the different people, all different stakeholders that can benefit, and I think you'll be able to get some support in maintaining those areas with volunteer groups, with nonprofits, with people that care about it too. So the burden isn't just on the city to be able to maintain it. It's really a burden for all of us, but it's one that's worth having.
Thank you, Carrie. Moving on, the Edwards Ranch is a prime example of healthy and successful development we've seen here in the city. Paxton, can you start by just briefly describing the history of the ranch and just talk a bit about how it's become what it is today?
Sure, you got an hour or two. You know, the ranch, just to kind of give a quick background, it was established in 1848, so a year before the city, the fort was established. So, you know, long history, and the whole reason the ranch was established there is because of the river. So water, great timber, great agricultural land. You know, the family has a view that we are stewards of the land. You know, this is something that we, you know, take very seriously, and have an obligation to do the right thing for the land and for the city of Fort Worth. It's not just about development; it's about trying to do the right thing for the long term. You know, and that permeates everything, every decision that we make. We try to be very thoughtful in how we approach that, and really looking to the long term. I joke, most people in the real estate world today think long term of 5 to 7 years. The Chisholm Trail Parkway was on our 1960 master plan, and we finally got it built in 2014, I think is when it opened. So, you know, we're here to be a partner. We view it as a partnership with the city and trying to do the right thing for the citizens of Fort Worth. You know, to that end, the river has been something that has been vitally important to our family over the years, and something that we've really tried to embrace as we have embarked on the development of Clear Fork and River Hills. You know, one of those, you know, things that we've done that you don't really see today on the south side of the river, instead of doing traditional kind of box culvert drainage infrastructure, we built a series of lakes that will also contain be approximately 50 acres of parkland. So it'll function as natural filtration for stormwater, additional open space for the neighborhood and the region. So I think that's, trying to think from that perspective rather than just, well, this is the way you always do it from an engineering standpoint. We've incorporated some of that at Clear Fork as well, and some of our storm drain system, but also trying to create those buffers in those areas where people can get out, they can enjoy nature, they can enjoy the trail system, and really try to create a whole ecosystem around that while still being able to go develop, buildings and opportunities for people to work and dine and play.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned, in addition to the economic development in that area, there's a big aspect of conservation and being a stewardship of those resources and green spaces. Will we continue to see in the future Edwards Ranch conserving these green spaces? Does it have a place in its future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our master plan has a significant amount of green space. I was trying to do some quick calculations this week to figure out what that percentage actually is. But I mean, the goal is to maintain a significant green buffer along the riverfront to really kind of allow kind of a building buffer from the river and kind of a green space for people to be out and enjoy, along with significant park space within the development, park areas and some preserved canopy areas. So trying to incorporate, both active spaces and then probably some more passive preservation pieces. And that goes back to, I think, something that was just talked about earlier on kind of the maintenance side of things. I think it's really important for people when we think about open space, the open space initiative, is that green spaces and open spaces don't all look the same. And so I think most people maybe have an idea of what that looks like to them, but from a highly manicured park to a more natural native landscape, it's not all going to look the same, and it's not all going to be managed the same. And so I think that's something that's really important as we think about this holistically from a community standpoint, is we need a combination of all of these things to kind of preserve that feel of what Fort Worth, I think, has been so successful with in the past.
Thank you. I know we briefly mentioned ecological regions. Rachel, I'd like for you to start with this. Fort Worth encompasses both native prairies and cross timbers. Why are these ecological regions important?
Thanks. Well, yeah, I mentioned before, Fort Worth is home to the Cross Timbers ecoregion. So that's characterized, as I mentioned, by our rolling hills. We have dense woodlands with cedar elms and old oaks, juniper trees, and those are also interspersed with wild open fields. We also have one of the largest river systems flowing right through our town in the Trinity River. So all of that combined creates the natural character of our city. But that natural character is just so much more than a beautiful landscape. We receive critical services from these open natural areas. Allison and everyone is talking about recreational access, which is so important. But I'm backing up to even more fundamental services like water. Our open spaces do an incredible job filtering and cleaning water and contributing to our water quantity and quality. Talking about air, that open space does an amazing job of cleaning and filtering the air that we breathe. And also our prairies, specifically, are home to some of the richest, healthiest soil in the world. And that's fueled our powerhouse agricultural economy. So we're talking about critical services that we receive that sustain our residents here. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, that biologists call those services ecosystem services, or you might also hear the term natural infrastructure. So when we're thinking about some of the weather extremes that we have here, that inevitable cycle of drought and flood, having wild open space, the mayor talked about it, our floodplains are so important, just having that wild open space that can act as a sponge to slow and sink flash flood waters. So you're talking about billions of dollars of infrastructure from engineers that's just free in here if we can conserve it. And we've already done an amazing job protecting that land. So again, when we're talking about preserving this land, we're talking about sustaining our residents here and making sure that our future Fort Worthians can prosper as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Carrie, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Not only with those ecosystem services that are important for everyday life for all of us, but also studies have shown that fragmented parts and fragmented green spaces don't necessarily offer the same ecosystems at the same levels. So it's not every green space, like you mentioned, looks the same, but the longer the flatlet, the longer the landscape, the more dense of the forest, you're gonna get even more of those ecosystem services. They're gonna punch above their weight. So I think that's important with the planning, and I really commend the city of Fort Worth and their leadership for being able to think of those things, because it really does make a huge difference when it comes to your public health benefits.
Thank you, Carrie. Allison, would you like to follow?
Yeah, I think you guys covered it really well. I think ecosystem services often get overlooked. Like you said, it's these ecosystems have been in place for thousands of years, and they do their job really well. We just need to conserve and work with them. Nature is such a tool. And then also kind of going back to like just the characteristic of our city and our town and this whole region. You know, Paxton, you're talking about how the river's been so important, you know, for your family and for the, you know, the ranch for, you know, years. I mean, when we conserve these lands, we're ensuring that this landscape will be here for the future so that we don't lose the aesthetic character as well. So people can continue to learn about these ecosystems well into the future.
Thank you, Allison. I know we've talked a lot about the ecosystem services and the many benefits that come out of these green spaces. We will start with Paxton on this. How can the public, developers, and businesses included benefit from preserving and saving these green spaces and open spaces?
Well, I think you were just touching on the ecosystem aspects of it. You know, one of the things that I think is maybe not recognized enough, but just it was mentioned about flood control. So I think that is a significant piece of the puzzle here on open spaces and their ability to manage high rain events. So going back to the mayor's comments, don't pave paradise. Well, you know, every bit of paving we add, you know, you've got to deal with stormwater runoff, and that's a real cost. It's a cost to the development community. It's a cost to the taxpayers long term on maintenance and infrastructure. So I think being very thoughtful about how we manage stormwater is a key piece to this, and the open space initiative, and being thoughtful by the development community on how they're managing that stormwater and using, you know, we like to say, let the land tell you what to do in our office, and I think that's, you know, a big piece of how we can be thoughtful. Let the land tell you how to manage this. You don't always have to necessarily have an engineered solution. Sorry, my engineer friends. But you know, let's work with nature and figure out how to do this in a better way. So I think that's one key element. And then I think, you know, the development community and I think businesses recognize the value of these open spaces. I mean, not to, you know, always careful comparing to Dallas, but you look at what's happened with the park downtown and the amount of, you know, development and business attraction that's happened by creating a park over over a freeway. And so, you know, I just use that as an example of if people and businesses want to gather around these green spaces. And so I do think it is proven over and over again that it is an economic development driver. And so I think there's inherent benefit for all parties to prioritize that in their efforts.
Thank you, Paxton. Carrie, would you like to add to that?
No, I think you did a great job with that. So no, I think we covered it pretty well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, Fort Worth is now officially the 10th largest city in the country. We are at the crossroads of maintaining a balance between growth and saving what's left of Fort Worth's natural land. How will green space be incorporated in Fort Worth's growth strategy, and what are the challenges in preserving that land? Allison?
Well, I'd like to, really give, credit to the city and all the work that's been done for years. I mean, I'm pretty new to the city. I've been there for a year and a half. And it's really incredible the internal alignment the city has built over, the past few decades. With good natured casting this vision, and then, things like the green space or the green print master plan from the Parks Department is really very forward on strategic, growth of green areas. The Transportation and Public Works right now is working on their master thoroughfare plan that I think they'll be bringing to council soon. It's really cool to see how they've integrated trail connections and micromobility opportunities into the master thoroughfare plan, thinking about how we can use green spaces for getting around our city instead of being completely reliant on cars and concrete. The urban forestry master plan and having a 30% canopy coverage goal, like all of these things together are a really great alignment internally at the city. We are trying to think of outside of the box and looking for other opportunities to continue improving internal city ordinances and standards and things that can help align to support green space infrastructure. And then beyond the city, I think Carrie, you said it earlier, the city cannot do this, and I don't think it was ever the intention for the city to do this alone. We are stronger together. Working with aligned entities. The city has a great relationship with TRWD. We had a joint acquisition with them recently for land conservation as well as water quality. Working with Trust for Public Land, and Trust for Public Land has been involved with the city in the open space program from the very inception. They helped us put together our open space strategic report. They built our GIS mapping tool that helps us prioritize and look at properties for acquisition. And identify areas for conservation, and then working with and Native Prairie Association of Texas. I think we're all stronger together, and I think private development honestly is a huge part of that as well. In my previous life, I was a design consultant. I actually got to work at Clear Fork, and seeing developers think outside the box and really think about green space as a tool is great. I think like you said, Paxton, it's kind of flown under the radar, but now that we're seeing other developers are seeing success at other projects, I think people are more inclined to do it that way. So I think it's kind of all of us together.
Thank you, Allison.
Sure.
Carrie, is there anything going on at Trust for Public Land that can kind of help these fast-growing cities preserve and maintain and make sure that these green spaces have a place in their future?
There are, and I think it starts with asking the questions. And I think this is a really good example this morning of how many people are in this room from the community. You have leadership that gets it, you have a community that wants it, and you have a landscape that is unbelievable and absolutely unique in the country. So I think you have all the parts here. And what Trust for Public Land does is we can go into other municipalities as well and try and help them identify those things. So it's about identifying your needs, identifying the project, identifying the funding agent, and then how to maintain and be an advocate for it. And it's absolutely rewarding to be able to do that, and it really takes everyone, like everyone has said, you're gonna get a better outcome when you have more stakeholders involved. And I know sometimes you can have too much of a good thing when it comes to feedback, but when it comes down to it, these stakeholders are vital because not one entity can take it on themselves.
Thank you, Carrie. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about how Native Prairies Association of Texas has a role in that as well?
Sure. Well, a little bit of information about Native Prairies Association of Texas. We were founded 40 years ago by a group of Texans that was concerned about how quickly our prairies were disappearing across the state. And since then, we've managed to protect thousands of beautiful prairie acres. And our primary means of doing that is through partnership with private landowners through something called a conservation easement. Some of y'all might already be familiar with this, but it essentially just helps landowners protect their natural spaces, their lands, while also ensuring that they can maintain and retain ownership. So we work hand in hand with landowners. When you're talking about conservation in Texas, oftentimes with a 95% privately owned state, you are talking conversations with landowners. So Native Prairies Association of Texas is working hard in the area to connect with more landowners to preserve their properties. We launched the North Texas Prairie Initiative in 2023, focused specifically on protecting the vital prairie lands in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And our initial goal was to protect 2,000 acres over the course of 4 years. We're halfway through and have already protected about 1,500 acres, so we're well on our way to meeting that goal, and just excited to meet more people and to work with other folks. So that's a little bit about NPAT. On top of that, Allison and folks at Fort Worth, I wanted to say how much comfort I find in knowing how aligned everybody is on goals as far as Fort Worth and Fort Worth's future. It's so refreshing and exciting.
Thank you, Rachel. Paxton, can you talk a little bit about what healthy development and collaboration with city officials and organizations can look like?
I think it's something that we do every day, and I think it's about asking questions and coming in with an open mind, trying to understand what the goals are of the city and their initiatives around open space, working with other partners, whether it's the water district if you're adjacent to them, but really trying to be thoughtful and having an open conversation about what you're trying to do, and I've found usually there's a win-win situation, solution to most of these if everybody's willing to roll up their sleeves and figure it out. And I think that's one of the great things about Fort Worth. I think we've got a history of collaboration and working together to solve challenges, and I view this as kind of one of those same things. As the community is willing to roll up their sleeves, the city is certainly made this a priority, as has the water district, and I think that's what it takes to make meaningful impact, and excited about where this is headed.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I'm going to take one more swing at that because there were a couple things that I thought of from the panel, so thank you for your info. A couple things we can do for Trust for Public Land and coming into other municipalities, other areas of folks that need help in preserving land. Sometimes it can start with data. So being able to figure out what is your trajectory? What are you projecting out 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Then you can start with mapping and start mapping the topography and know exactly, like you said, don't fight the land, it's gonna win. No matter how much money you throw at it, we've seen that, we see examples of that over and over in the news and otherwise. So I think being able to get your data, get your feedback, and then the other thing that we've done pretty well since 1996, we have a conservation finance division. And what that does, it works with communities of varying sizes throughout the country. And since 1996, we've helped to pass 697 bond initiatives that generated $1.12 billion for green space and conservation. That's billion with a B. So being able to work together and get that message out, and it sounds like people are hearing it. So that's something we can do for your environment, or for your community as well.
Thank you, Carrie. I know we can talk about green space, open spaces all day, but we'll be wrapping up with this last question that was actually submitted by a reader. What are the true obstacles that prevent neighborhoods, typically those with little or to no green space, access from acquiring these amenities and these assets? If large projects such as Gateway Park need large funding and smaller parks may need funding for maintenance, how do we maintain these while also solving a lack of green space and access in some neighborhoods? Allison, would you like to start?
Well, I would say that the green space team works very closely with the Parks Department. I'm technically in city manager's office very intentionally, so it's more of an interdepartmental role. But we work together with the Parks Department closely on finding opportunities to improve that access. I think the TPL, the park score, the improvement in our score overall in the last couple of years shows what we've just done in 2 years, and we try to prioritize all like throughout the city. I don't think there's any sort of like specific areas that we're we're looking at, but, you know, the open space conservation program, our funding is really flexible, and we're able to look citywide and find opportunities, look for, you know, areas that might need more access and green spaces, and where it might be lacking, and we're able to focus on those areas so that we can bring impact pretty quickly. And we work very closely with the Parks Department on that as well. So, you know, I think that, I mean, having access to open spaces is one of our largest goals. And I should say too, the open space program is still really new. We don't have a ton of staff, so we're very focused on acquisition right now. We are starting to pivot to activation, and we're looking to take the strategic report that we've had for a few years now into the next phase of a strategic plan on where those areas might be for activation that would have significant impact and things like that. So ideally, we're able to tackle the small areas as well as the larger projects like Gateway.
Absolutely, thank you, Allison. Carrie, I know Trust Public Land is, you know, very focused on making sure these areas are accessible. Can you kind of talk about how they're balancing both?
Sure, and it's a balance worth fighting for, to get right. When it comes to these spaces, especially in sort of our densely urban spaces around the country, what we've done is been able to take a look at some of the resources and look at it with a little bit of a different spin. I would say that ideally, restoration can be expensive. It's a really viable way to improve your community, but can also be expensive at times. But look at something like our schoolyard program. In some of these places, there might not be green space available, and there hasn't been in a long time. But being able to invest in a really robust schoolyard area, and then be able to partner with the ISDs, with other stakeholders, and have those spaces open after hours and on the weekends and on holidays, all of a sudden you've got an asset, not just for students, which is very important, but for everybody in the community. So sometimes being able to acquire land may not be the answer for your community, but we can help look at and see what do you have and how can you have that impact more people. At this point, I think we're at 400 schoolyards that we've renovated across the country, and we're continuing to do that, because especially in urban spaces, that seems like a win-win for everybody.
And yeah, I should follow up with that. So the city has a recent shared access agreement with Fort Worth ISD, and that did make a huge difference in increasing access for people to have be able to walk to a park within 5 or 10 minutes. So the idea is to have access outside of school hours. And we are continuing that effort and looking at other different, basically all the ISDs within Fort Worth to have another shared agreement and plan. So.
Thank you. Rachel, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to add to that?
I think these are the experts over here on that, so they covered it well. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That is our time. I just want to finish by once again thanking our panelists. If we could get another round of applause. Green space is a major area of our journalism, and rest assured you'll see more coverage on the issue and many other issues from the Fort Worth Report, and that will include our August 6th Candid conversation, which will take place after the global event that is the World Cup. So be on the lookout for more details about that. That wraps it up for today. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.